Thanks very much, Birgit. Thanks to everybody. So as Birgit just said, yes, I would like to sort of follow on from Sarah's presentation, who gave the overview, to sort of dive into a little bit more detail about how, from the social sciences and humanities perspective, we are being involved in EOSC. So yes, I'm speaking here from Ghent University hat on, connected with my DARIA hat on, but I also wanted to mention briefly the EOSC Future project that Sarah mentioned in one of her slides as well, because we're doing some work with my DARIA hat on through EOSC Future, which is very relevant here as well. So thankfully, I don't need to go into any detail about EOSC, because Sarah, who is much more qualified than me, has explained that very clearly. But what I want to dive into is how we can look at these kind of things from the social sciences and humanities perspective. So if we were to go to the EOSC portal, you can already see, if you scroll down on the EOSC portal page, there is access to all of the EOSC from the various different scientific domains. And here you can see on the left hand of the screen, the humanities and the social sciences. But once you get inside, you can see there are various filters in terms of different domains. So if you're a historian or a political scientist, you can go in and drill down to see exactly what is inside EOSC for your particular research area. So it's this perspective I'm looking at, and what I want to do is to take you a little bit behind the scenes to explore how infrastructures such as DARIA, the digital research infrastructure for the arts and humanities, and other social sciences and humanities research infrastructures can populate these different parts of the EOSC. So Sarah mentioned this slide as well. Within EOSC, there are 5 science clusters that bridge all of the different academic disciplines, from life science, environmental sciences, astronomy, particle physics, health and material sciences, and the one I'm going to dive into more detail, the social sciences and humanities, or SHOC, as we are known to our friends. So drilling down, so if you think of we're one of the 5 science clusters, here, if we drill down in a little bit more detail, you can see all of the different kinds of research infrastructures that contribute together to make the SHOC SSH science cluster. So we have on the left-hand side of the screen all of the different landmark ESFI infrastructures. So if you're not familiar with landmark, these are the ones that have been going for at least 10 years, are in the operational phase, and have been awarded the landmark status by the ESFRI consortium. So we have CESTA for the social science data archives, we have CLARIN for language technologies, we have DARIA for the arts and humanities, and we have European Social Survey and SHARE, which are 2 different kinds of social science survey infrastructures. But on the right-hand side of the screen, we have the up-and-coming SSH research infrastructures, such as OPERAS, that deals with open scholarly communication, ERIS, that deals with heritage science, or Resilience, that deals with religious studies. So you can see that this is a moving landscape, and we want everybody to be able to collaborate and provide the services that they're offering to their research communities via the EOSC. So just to tell you a little bit about the SHOC project. So it has just come to the end. It was a 14-month project with a huge budget of about 14 million euros. But the idea was that it was essential to be creating the social sciences and humanities part of the EOSC, and that is why we did all of this work. So, as I said, it was just coming to the end, and there are over 30 different key exploitable results that have come out of the SHOC project in terms of data management, data sets, networking, processing and analysis, data discovery and sharing, storage and training and support. However, what I wanted to talk to you more about today is the EOSC service catalogue, known as the SSH Open Marketplace. But before I do that, I just wanted to mention that this is all to do with sustainability as well. So the SHOCK project came to an end at the end of April. But one of the key exploitable results that came out of that was to explore how we can continue forward from here. So we have an MOU signed by the 5 landmark infrastructures and other ESRI projects that are emerging. But we are a very open cluster, so we're interested in new partners joining us from the social sciences and humanities so that together we can help contribute to the EOSC. So what I wanted to do is share with you the particular one of our main deliverables from the project. This is known to us as the SSH Open Marketplace, and you can find that here online. If you think of this as the social sciences and humanities part of the EOSC, the aggregation that happens within SHOCK also feeds into the main EOSC marketplace. However, this is where we work together with all of the different SSH service providers in order to provide the details that are needed. So, for example, we have various different types of tools and data sets. So we have the 5 main areas. So tools and services, training materials, publications, data sets, and workflows. So very similar to what is provided by the EOSC in general. However, what is so important about this is the interconnection between these different types of resources in EOSC speak, the contextualization and the interlinking. So all of this is part of the SSH ecosystem for EOSC. So if I just dive into a little bit more detail on one of these, this is the workflows. And here you can see the interrelationship between the different types of resources offered by the SHOCK Open Marketplace really coming together. So I'm just going to use one small example. Oops, went too quickly there. Now it's going to go back. This is an example of just one of the workflows that are inside the SHOCK Open Marketplace. This one comes from the linguistics and historical linguistics domain, but how to create a dictionary within TEI, the Text Encoding Initiative. So here you can see the various different steps that you need to go through, and all of these workflows are created by researchers expert in the domain. Each of those are set down in very easy workflow steps. And then at each part of the workflow, you can link in the various data sets, the tools, the training materials, and hopefully in the end, also the research data sets and publications that have been made with those workflows. So this is the integrating factor that makes this very useful for the researchers. The idea is to be able to share these different workflows so that people don't have to reinvent the wheel, and they can look at the experience of others about what has worked well. So now I wanted to sort of go a little bit more behind the scenes and understand how the SHOCK or the SSH part of the EOSC has been put together. So firstly, if I'm thinking now a little bit with my DARIA hat on, the first step in this process is to become an EOSC provider. And here the EOSC team has provided a dashboard, a provider's dashboard, to make this as easy as possible to be able to join the EOSC as a provider. So here, for example, taking the SHOCK Open Marketplace, this is co-designed and offered to the EOSC by the 3 core infrastructures within the SHOCK, that's DARIA, CESTA and Clarin. And in order to do that, each of these organizations, and what is important, it needs to be a legal entity, have to become providers within the EOSC ecosystem. And here you can just see what it looks like. And then once a provider has been added to EOSC, then you can browse all of the resources that are related to that provider. The second step is, once you've become a provider, then you can start adding your resources. And here you can see a video video from the provider's platform where it takes you through actually how to onboard EOS Speak, but how to interconnect the resources that you would like to offer, with that be that tools, data sets, or training materials, for example, into the EOS catalog. And here you can see a screenshot from the video that has been made to show you how to do that as an EOS provider. Here, I just wanted to give you 3 examples of different resources from the SHOC ecosystem. So first one is DARIA Campus. This is a discovery framework and hosting platform for arts and humanities learning resources. So this is all about open educational resources for the training in the arts and humanities. The second one, which has been mentioned already, is the SESTA Data Catalog, which is a one-stop shop for the search and discovery of social science and humanities research data. And finally, we have the Clarin Language Resource Switchboard, which is a web application that suggests language analysis tools for specific data sets. So it enables you to help select which tool is appropriate for the particular data set you want to analyze. So these are just 3 examples of some of the resources that have been provided via the SHOC cluster to the EOSC catalog. However, the one I wanted to go into a little bit more detail here is the actual onboarding of the SSH Open Marketplace. So this is the one we just saw with the various different data, training resources, tools, workflows, etc. And now this has been onboarded so that those resources can be made available via the EOSC. So here you can see how the SSH Open Marketplace looks inside the EOSC portal. However, what Sarah talked about is how to connect. So once you have onboarded the various different sources into the EOSC, what makes it truly valuable is the interconnection with the various core services or the more generic services that are offered via EOSC to make the added value for researchers that Sarah also mentioned. So, for example, the EOSC AAI, which is the single sign-on. So this basically makes it easier for researchers once they're logged into EOSC. It's easier to log into all of the different services that a particular researcher has access to in one-stop shop. Then you've got services such as monitoring. This is very useful for the service providers themselves to make sure that their service is up and running and both is available and reliable. Help desk functionality, that helps, for example, so if a particular researcher was having a problem with one of your services, then by using the help desk functionality, you can as quickly as possible solve any issues so the research can continue. Another one I want to mention, which will be coming later, is accounting for services. This is very interesting as well, because you'll be able to provide, understand detailed usage figures about the uses of your services that you can provide back to your funding agencies to help continue the funding stream. So that is just one example of the different kinds of core services that as a service provider you can interconnect within the EOSC ecosystem. So just wanted to give you 2 practical examples here. So going back to the social sciences and humanities open marketplace, here you can see that we've been working on integrating that with the EOSC AAI or single sign-on. So for example, if as a researcher in the social sciences and humanities, you wanted to add a new workflow into the SHOC open marketplace, you would need to sign on to do this. This here you can see it has been interconnected with the EOSC AAI, and as DARIA, for example, I can use my DARIA account to log in there. But there are many of the providers, so I can also, for example, with my Ghent University hat on, also log into the SSH Open Marketplace with my Ghent University login, as just 2 particular examples. A second integration here, this is an example of the SESTA monitoring service. So here you can see, as resource provider, you can check what the availability and the reliability of your services, for example, over the last 30 days. And then you can see how well you are doing as a service provider within the EOSC landscape. And what is all of this interconnection enabling? And Sarah mentioned two particular initiatives that are currently open for researchers to be able to apply for to do these, the interdisciplinary research and the early adopters program. However, within the EOSC future, there are 10 science projects. These are actually being funded in the context of the EOSC future project to help researchers to engage in an interdisciplinary manner with the various different EOSCs, with the various different resources in EOSC. So, for example, we have things on dark matter, we have things on climate and neutral and smart cities, and climate change and the impact on biodiversity. I was very lucky to be at the presentation the other day where EOSC services were being demonstrated, and a particular researcher was able, using EOSC and a various number of Jupyter notebooks, to analyze the ozone data from during the lockdown to see how the lockdown had affected, because there were less aeroplanes, less ship travel and these kind of things, how that affected the ozone layer during the lockdown. So this she was able to do within the EOSC landscape. And I don't want to underestimate the sort of advocacy and policy level impact of EOSC in the social sciences and humanities. So being part of these science clusters, the social sciences and humanities are high up against life sciences, high energy physics or environmental sciences. So this has been absolutely crucial to be the source, the voice of the social sciences in the humanities. So it has helped magnify our voice at the highest levels in European policy formation. But secondly, and most crucially, it's helped to make sure our needs are recognized within the EOSC landscape. And finally, on this kind of governance level activity, Sarah showed the different parts of the EOSC, of the different government models related to EOSC. Active participation in the EOSC association is very important. So both from my personal hat here, as a member of Ghent University is one of the founding members of the EOSC association, as is Daria. And by understanding who within your network is part of the EOSC association, and perhaps even getting involved in yourself, then there are various task forces. You can influence the various different strategic directions. So I would definitely take a look at are there existing members within EOSC that you already know within your network, or is your organization not yet a member of EOSC and would be interested in joining? So now I'm just going to change the tempo a little bit, and Sarah already thankfully mentioned in her presentation these different European data spaces that are currently emerging within the wider European landscape. And to do that, I wanted to mention how important cultural heritage data from libraries, archives and museums is for humanities research. So we see it definitely as cultural heritage data is the humanities primary research data. So back in 2000, Toma Tasovac, Elizabeth Sifra and myself wrote a Daria position paper stressing the importance of this and how we need to interconnect all the various cultural heritage data within the research data ecosystem. And maybe these European data spaces are a way to do that. So I think Inga will talk probably more about this in her presentation later, but EOSC and libraries, at a recent EOSC Future workshop, there was a whole section dedicated to libraries and the importance of libraries as being EOSC providers. I think it's libraries, archives, museums. This is absolutely essential in order for the EOSC to work for the social sciences and humanities, so that we have easily got access to our primary data within the EOSC landscape. Here is the particular data space that is emerging. It was only announced in November last year, so it is very early days, and the first calls are just closing as we speak. However, I think this European data space for cultural heritage, it could be very interesting, and it's really crucial to see how we can align or even interoperate and share data. Europeana, as I'm sure many of you will know, will be the foundation of the European data space for cultural heritage. They've done a crucial amount of work of being able to provide access and network for the cultural heritage sector within Europe. So it's absolutely crucial that we find ways to make sure that the data that has already been aggregated via Europeana can be shared within the EOSC ecosystem as well. So I'll finish there for now, but thanks very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Sally. This was very interesting information. Also, the news about the data space for cultural heritage data. So any questions from the audience or comments? You're welcome to raise your hand, or Hans, you are. Please go ahead, Hans. Can't hear you yet.
Yes, so, no, can you hear me now? Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. It's a very nice presentation. I could overview what the big activities. And one important point you pointed out that this has this common way to access all the resources, have this EOSC AI, so you can see them. At the same time, we also have this other big European infrastructure, EuroHPC, where you also will have a lot of resources in different countries, and they're also developing an access method for all these countries. So what's your view of how these EOSC and EuroHPC should collaborate in having the same structure? So the researcher can, in the same manner, access both in infrastructures. How should we enable that?
Thank you very much for that question, Hans Carlson. Well, I have another slide from another presentation on that, and I'm very lucky with at Ghent University, and I think Ewald Powels, who is our scientific coordinator, who is in this project as well. We have been working within, now I'm talking with my Belgian hat on. So the Flemish supercomputer, for example, is part of the LUMI consortium within EuroHPC. And within the Flemish Claria project, which is a combination of Daria and Clarin, we were very lucky to be one of the sort of pilot projects to see how we could just as a sort of test case. So what we've been doing is, and this collections as data. So for example, we're currently working with the National Library, the Royal Library in Belgium, KBR, to see if we can put some of the research data sets, for example, digitized newspapers, onto the high performance computer, so they can be easily accessed via the both computing computing part of the HPC. So for example, if we wanted to do layout recognition or optical character recognitions, we can use the compute part of the HPC to train the various models using artificial intelligence. At the same time, we on the same supercomputer, using the cloud part of the supercomputer, there we want to provide access to Jupyter notebooks, so we can have sort of a researcher come along. So once the data has been made machine readable, what we can do is provide access to the Jupyter notebooks and set up specific Jupyter notebooks that are there to help analyze the cultural heritage data sets as well. So by bringing them closer together, it makes the research a lot easier, and then the resulting research data can easily be reposited in the open data repository. I think cross-border is a lot more challenging, well, particularly in cultural heritage, as we've got to deal with copyright. So I think that is still a work in progress, but we've already been working with the Finnish colleagues and also the Danish colleagues who are very high up in this area related to the analysis of cultural heritage data and also born digital data such as web archives and social media archives, which have got even more legal challenges. So at the moment, we're sort of doing national level analysis and then seeing what we can compare. So derived data sets and how we can share that, if that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, part is very beautiful, but then also the researcher should have one way to log into the system. There should be one password, one username, so that you don't need to have manage two different systems, one for EOSC and one for EuroHPC. So now when we're building this, we make sure that we really talk to each other and we make some kind of common solutions. Okay.
Absolutely, this is bias, so it will be all interconnected via, for example, Belnet Federation, that will be interconnected with the EOSC AI Federation, and we've got one pilot with Germany, so we've got a new project starting. So we just want to test that, for example, somebody from Göttingen University could log in to the Belgian system as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, very interesting information. So we have one question or comment in the chat. I mean, Sinok, if you would like to speak up, you are welcome, of course.
Okay, mine is a very quick question because I'm teaching cultural heritage for BA students in the Netherlands, and then without my intention, actually, students made us when they do their assignments, they include some digital kind of perspective and how to manage the cultural heritage on online or digital environment. So, but you mentioned that there was a sort of online course before, but it's almost closing now. So I just wondering if there any other courses coming up so I can catch up the newest trend.
Yes, this was a call for the first operation to do with the European Cultural Heritage data space. So this is about how to build that. So these were the calls there. But within that context, what we're going to do is work with Europeana, and we've got something called Daria Campus, where we provide the online training material. So we've been in collaboration with Europeana to see what we can do about for example, how to use the Europeana APIs in the arts and humanities data, sort of in the arts and humanities context. And the second one is within the SHOCK marketplace. You may be familiar with the Collections as Data initiative, and I can put it into the chat for you for afterwards. What we want to do is build a workflow to help cultural heritage institutions to be able to publish their cultural heritage data sets as collections as data as well. So there are two concrete things that we are hoping to do in the coming months and years.
Yeah, so this also goes in the direction of visiting data through APIs. Is this correct, Sally? I mean, to enable more.
It's APIs. Well, I think I see it as kind of a continuum. So, and I'll pop some links into the chat afterwards. But for example, the National Library of Luxembourg, or the Data Foundry at the National Library of Scotland, they're doing sort of data sets that have DOIs and are citable, but are just for download. For some of the humanities and social sciences, researchers may not feel comfortable working with APIs as yet. However, we want to do the Jupyter notebooks as the sort of user-friendly way to getting into Jupyter notebooks, but of course people who are more digital literate can do it straight away with the APIs.
Yeah, often people then develop some libraries which make it a bit easier to access through APIs. But exactly. We have one more person, Sarah Marie, if you would like to comment, ask a question, please unmute yourself.
Hello, I'm afraid I can't start the video because my host has stopped it.
No problem.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Hello, everyone. So you mentioned that libraries are essential as EOSC providers for the system to work for arts and humanities. And I wanted to ask whether this is the case for the quote-unquote hard sciences as well, just out of interest.
Sorry, the sound was a bit broke up. Could you repeat? Sorry, I didn't quite hear you. Hard sciences, but I didn't hear the first part, sorry.
Oh, the question is whether you stated that libraries as EOSC providers are essential for EOSC to work for the arts and humanities. And I wondered whether that was the case for the hard sciences as well.
That's a very interesting question. I mean, I'm focusing on the social sciences and humanities, so I'm not so familiar with the hard sciences and the natural sciences. Maybe one of the colleagues that will be speaking later from the life sciences or environmental sciences will be able to access it. Able to answer that question better. But if I understand from what I've seen from the different science clusters, there's like, for example, the ozone data. It was more actually data from scientific instruments coming in. Of course, they'll need secondary publication data and that sort of thing. However, perhaps somebody is better at answering there, but I don't know in how far cultural heritage data is needed for the sciences, hard sciences, natural sciences.
Thank you.
Yeah, hopefully we'll find out through the course, which Sarah mentioned, the EOS Future interdisciplinary, where you have likely some sciences collaborating with social science and then they combine data. So, but Margareta, you also wanted to...
Well, I would just like to comment on that because I'm in the interface between hard sciences and heritage science, and with a background as material scientist, but also dealing with whatever is in libraries, etc. I would say that what you are asking for is somewhat going on, but of course, there is also a lot of work to do to reach this kind of match between different kinds of data. Tomorrow here in Uppsala, we will have a workshop in the interface between well, people working with collections in museums and people working with neutron scattering techniques. And of course, they will generate a tremendous lot of data and they will publish and so on. But they are also in their main profession, so to say. There are art historians, for instance, or archaeologists or linguists or something like that. So this is really an exciting area, I would say.
And maybe I could add just one further thing. We've been doing some work with the DISCO. They're doing with the natural heritage collections. And one area we've been looking at is the sort of history of science. So the archives that are inside natural heritage museums, the herbariums, but more from a cultural historical perspective. So that is the kind of the work we've been doing to date.
Yeah, there is a lot of interesting climate in issues to be found out more about as well in natural historical collections.
Okay, so any further questions? So I see one message here. So Nanette, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that the information, particularly in historical books, whatever discipline you think of, is relevant to also the hard sciences. But we are still struggling with the OCR problem, which is not yet solved, or we can't deliver the good quality full text and information out of these books.
And that's exactly how EOS could help us, to go back to the previous question. If we can use the sort of high performance computing to start training the models, and in how we're doing in Belgium is doing a mixture between crowdsourcing to make the ground truth and then retraining the models using high performance computing. That can help us have the benefit to help as far as possible. And I agree exactly. The historical text is definitely not solved yet, but it can help us move in the right direction.
Okay, then I would say we are ready for a break. Thank you again, Sally.